Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday, August 26, 2022. This is the Sip Stack on Substack, the podcast version. And today's edition is entitled Friday, August 26, 2022, Just Write It. But wait, there's more. Using AI art generators to give you writing prompts. All right, let's jump into it here. Has anyone else out there read The Nightland by William Hope Hodgson? People are going to get sick of my griping about it, but I have to speak with someone who's completed it. It's currently my reading challenge, and there are some brilliant ideas in it, but boy howdy does Willie repeat himself a lot. And he goes on tangents that are entirely inconsequential to the plot just because he can. Literally, if you haven't read it, I read a section last night that he basically prompted with, this doesn't matter to the story, but because my story is so epic, I'm going to tell you about it anyway, even though it literally does not matter. If I tried writing that in my writing today, an editor wouldn't just cut that piece out. They'd give it the same treatment as the copier in Office Space. Anyway, it's Friday. For all you writers, readers, poets, and dreamers out there, we made it to the end of another week. Good job. The weekend ahead is yours to do with as you wish, so wish good things. And for those of you in the service industry or other non-Monday to Friday positions, thank you for hanging in there. Your Friday is coming. Article 1. Write. Just write. Even the greatest recipe in the world is just an idea until someone puts the flour in the bowl and starts baking. Or the vegetables in the pan and starts cooking. Whether you like to bake or cook, you get it. You prefer building? The blueprints for the perfect house cannot be lived in. You have to build it. So what's the point of all this analogy and metaphor this early in the morning? Well, we've spent a lot of time organizing our thoughts on the writing projects we've been exploring. We took notes of the little random ideas that hit us, put those notes into a world-building Bible or an idea web, and streamlined into a brief but detailed outline. The plans are laid. We've thought about this long enough. It's time to write. And the final step of bringing an idea from concept to conclusion is to do it. There are a few little organizational concepts that I want to share here that can make tackling a word count more manageable, but one thing I cannot help you with is the writing itself. After a point, you have to write the damn thing. I usually go into the writing process with a word count goal in mind, and then I break that word count up over the different acts of my outline. So for example, a short fantasy novel I'm working on right now has an assignment of a 15,000 word first act, a 45,000 word second act, and a 10,000 word third act. Then I set daily writing pars, say 1,000 to 2,000 words a day, and that helps me understand exactly the time requirement or time commitment it'll require for me to bring the idea across the finish line in rough draft form. For listeners and for watchers, I do have one other thought that I want to put out there that talks about how to continue to subdivide your word counts. If I have a good idea of the number of chapters that I want to put in a particular manuscript or book, I will also subdivide my word count across those chapters. That way I know exactly how long it's going to take to get from one chapter of the book to the next to the next. It's just an additional organization form that I really like to use for managing my time. I also create a word count deficit log. And this is the opposite of what you might think of as a deficit. In this case, anytime I exceed the word count for a particular chapter or a particular act, let's say I go 2,000 words over my anticipated first act word count, I put that in the deficit log so I know exactly how many words I'm going to have to go back in the other direction when I get into the editing phase. I don't try and take anything out of what I've set forth in the initial rough draft, but I know that in the back of my mind, at some point, I'm going to have to lose a word count of a pretty substantial nature. The deficit log really, really helps me keep on task. Now, for newer writers or writers getting back into manuscripting after an extended break, I typically don't recommend word count pars, but time goals. Set aside 20 to 30 minutes a day to apply towards your project and get as far as you can in that time until you're reasonably and consistently able to get a few hundred words. Then start upping the ante. Look, I'm a more thoughtful writer these days than in the early era of my Krog the Battle Prince saga. 27-year-old Ryan would say, get the idea, write the thing. And that's a pretty open loop. Some of the planning and organizing I've detailed this week may be too much for those of you with more of a locomotive mind, and that's awesome. Take what you can and just discard the rest. But for those of you struggling to organize your thoughts around an idea you're really excited about, try the methodology I've laid out. It takes time, but it does set you up for a great writing experience. Just remember, after a point, you must stop planning and start writing. As I have always said, don't try and write, just write. Just write. Article 2, AI-generated art as a writing prompt. Check in. How'd you feel about your attempt to write a 2-sentence horror story? It's not easy, is it? They're a pretty big undertaking for only 2 short sentences. Trying to deliver on an idea and then bring it to a conclusion in less than 30 words is tough. So here's mine. She always thought the singer on the record had such a powerful, sorrowful voice. Of course, she couldn't figure out how it was playing without being plugged in. My record player started skipping at one point yesterday, and it put me in an eerie mindset. What if the record player was playing on its own? What would a haunted record player play? What did you come up with? Since it's Friday, today's writing prompt is a bit longer, but will hopefully give you something to work on if you need an idea for the weekend. Here's what I want you to do. Start by writing a brief 1-sentence physical description of a main character in something you're working on. Even though I'm not actively working on his saga anymore, I chose Krog and came up with a barbarian prince with sharp eyes and tangled hair. Then put that through an artificial intelligence art generator and see what it comes back with. Write a story about the character the AI spits out. I got this idea speaking to a writer yesterday who'd spent some time trying to get the AI to generate images of her characters as she pictured them. I thought it would be fun to go the other direction. Whatever the computer provides, write about it. Have fun. Article 3, adventure running. Probably my all-time favorite form of exercise is adventure running, or obstacle course races. I love being out in nature on a trail with cool, wacky, and challenging stuff to climb over, navigate through, or climb, carry. Moving through an environment using all your limbs, grabbing, pulling, running, and sweating, it's the ultimate rush. And while I saved the best for last, I will say that this is the form of exercise I engage in the least. My preferred adventure runs, Spartan races, are expensive and can be tough to get to depending on where you live. So I only get to do a few each year. That said, if you have the means, consider giving an obstacle course race a shot. There are some great mud runs that are very welcoming to beginners if you've never attempted something like an obstacle course race before. And if you do decide to tackle one, here's my mantra. Complete, don't compete. You're not out there for anyone but you. So just get yourself across the finish line and be proud of your accomplishment. Be safe, go at your own pace, and have an awesome time. Final disclaimer on these, I am not a certified trainer or medical professional, and before attempting any new form of exercise, you should always consult with someone who is trained or educated, preferably both. I co-host another podcast with a buddy of mine where we review aggressively average movies, and we record in an hour, so this is where I leave you. I'm off to organize my notes around a film that was almost a brilliant satire, but fell just short of the mark. Whatever brings you joy today that doesn't impede the happiness or well-being of others, do that thing. For me, it's going to be a goofy podcast and then a long weekend of sinking into a new fairy tale manuscript. That's all for this week. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.